Boys, what's good? It's Herm. We're here today with 10 NBA trades that could happen on draft night. The NBA draft is now just about 3 weeks away, so I wanted to come here and talk about this to just kind of forecast some potential trades we could see coming up and just what they would look like, what teams would be involved. We're going to focus on 4 teams. So I actually think picks 3 through 6 of the lottery all have a pretty decent chance of being traded. So there will be teams with interest in them. There will be teams selecting that are interested in moving out. So that's the Trailblazers at number 3, the Rockets at 4, Pistons at 5, and the Orlando Magic at 6, and they also have 11. So we're going to get into trades involving those teams and what that could end up being. But before we do, think about subscribing. It's free, it's easy. If you don't want the content, you can always unsubscribe later. That's fine. We're on the road to 8,000 subs, and we're trying to get there soon. So let's just get into it, though, starting with the Portland Trailblazers. So trades for the Trailblazers' 3rd overall pick. Starting off with DeMar DeRozan, Portland adds an all-star wing. Trailblazers receive DeMar DeRozan and Alex Caruso in exchange for Yusuf Nurkic and the number 3 overall pick. DeMar DeRozan at this point pretty well into his 30s, kind of declining a little bit, but still an all-star last season, still a very good player. And they also get Alex Caruso, who I believe was first team all defense this year. Very good player. All these trades, by the way, I found online, different places, because when I make them I get a lot of flack. So we're gonna deal with some of these trades that I found online. So DeMar and Alex Caruso in exchange for Nurkic and number 3. The Bulls have kind of had some point guard issues since Lonzo went down. They've tried Kobe White, they've tried Ayo Dosunmu. I don't think either of those guys are the future point guard for the Bulls. So if you're thinking this for the Bulls, you make this deal if Scoot Henderson is on the board at number 3. If Scoot Henderson is gone, if Brandon Miller's on the board, the Bulls don't make this pick. I mean, they have wings, they have DeMar, they have LaVine, and they have Patrick Williams. So if they're doing this, they're doing it for their elite point guard of the future, which would be Scoot Henderson, kind of a reminiscent player to Derrick Rose. So to add another super athletic point guard with MVP upside to your lineup would be super intriguing for Bulls fans. Bulls fans are great, by the way. They sell out pretty consistently. So to get Scoot there would just bring a lot of excitement to Chicago. And for Portland, you add an all-star teammate for Dame in DeMar DeRozan, as well as adding an elite backcourt defensive member in Caruso. So you can run Dame and Caruso in the backcourt with DeMar at the 3, and you still have Simons, who you could either bring off the bench, or I guess you could start next to Dame. Maybe you trade him in a separate deal for another great asset, but this gives you another all-star next to Dame, which at this point he just doesn't have. At number 2, Utah continuing its rebuild. I've been very kind of outwardly spoken that I wouldn't trade Lowry if I were them, but the Trailblazers received Lauri Markkanen, who was an all-star starter last season, was dominant when on the floor for Utah, super efficient, really kind of showing how versatile he is as a 7-footer who can play the small forward. You also, you trade Nurkic and you get the number 3 overall pick. So for the Jazz here, again, just lost a point guard in Mike Conley. Colin Sexton is there, but that wouldn't stop you from taking Scoot, or you could take Brandon Miller. For Utah here, it's really just about capitalizing on talent, getting young players that you try to fit your rebuild timeline. If I'm Utah, I'd keep Lowry because he's an all-star and he's a very good player. He's also, I believe, still 26 or 27. He's right in that range. So he's kind of just entering his prime. He's not too old. But if you get him here, it adds a great pick-and-roll partner for Damian Lillard and a phenomenal wing, especially if you keep Jeremy Grant, because a Jeremy Grant, Lauri Markkanen forward kind of combo would be very, very good and really help you to kind of take the next step. 3rd, Portland gets a center upgrade. If we're just being honest, Nurkic is in all these trades for a reason. His contract is big and he's kind of declining. Nurkic just isn't the player he used to be. I believe he's had some shoulder injuries. I think that was the big thing. But he might have tore his Achilles. I can't remember. But I know he was injured for a kind of substantial period of time. Before that, when it was him and CJ and Dame, there was a while where people thought Nurkic was going to be really great, but he's just kind of slipped off. So Jarrett Allen goes to Portland, as well as Isaac Okoro is a defensive wing. They lost Josh Hart. They traded him, so they get another defensive wing here. And the Cavs get the number 3 overall pick, as well as Yusuf Nurkic. See, this is kind of the opposite of the coin here, because they already have Garland and Mitchell as kind of their their backcourt of the future. So if Brandon Miller falls to pick 3, Cleveland has needed a kind of small forward upgrade pretty badly. So to add a reliable kind of offensive presence in the front court would be huge for Cleveland, because right now that's where they're lacking most, is offense in the front court. Also, moving off of Jared Allen probably gives you a better chance of realizing Evan Mobley's full potential as a big man, because at this point his offensive game probably isn't quite polished enough to play the 4 all the time. It does give Cleveland some offensive issues. They would lose some defense here, but Brandon Miller's no scrub defensively either. So Cleveland kind of builds for now and for the future in filling their needs, and Portland gets the center upgrade that they desperately need as well. They only trade the 3rd pick. They still have Simon, still have Sharp. So if I'm them, I'm pretty satisfied, especially getting off of Nurkic's contract. Now let's look at trades for the Rockets' 4th pick. It's being heavily reported that James Harden is probably going back to Houston. So if you're thinking about Rockets trades, you're thinking about making a playoff push. That's why the first one is here, Rockets making a playoff push by trading for OG Anunoby, who I know they had interest in at last year's deadline, and is just a player that basically every team wants, it feels like, as a great defensive player and a guy that's still trending upward offensively. The Rockets get OG Anunoby, and the Raptors get KJ Martin, Tari Eason, the number 4 pick, in a 2025 first. It was reported at the deadline that they are turning down offers of 3 first-round picks, but if you're looking at number 4, you're getting a player like Amen Thompson to potentially be your kind of lead ball handler of the future for Toronto. You also get Tari Eason, who is an all-rookie all-rookie second-team selection this season. KJ Martin, who's a very reliable power forward. So you kind of fill out some depth as well as adding a player like Thompson. And the Rockets get OG Anunoby, who, if they're bringing in Harden, Anunoby helps them more than Eason or the 4th pick will. So this helps the Rockets take a further jump and just be a more complete, more balanced basketball team. Another option is continuing to go young by adding a more proven young player than what the number 4 pick would provide. So here they get Keldon Johnson of the Spurs, and the Spurs receive the number 4 pick as well as a 2025 first rounder. So the Spurs here would get Thompson. They need a point guard upgrade probably. Trey Jones has been pretty good for them, but realistically is probably a high-end backup more than a quality starter. So Thompson gives you the upside there to kind of have your future 2 guys with Thompson and Wembanyama. They also have Sohan, who I really like, and Devin Vassell. So they move off one of those guys. They move off Keldon Johnson, who was, I believe, like a 22 point per game scorer this year. So the Rockets add a proven scoring wing who can space the floor. Kind of a down shooting year this year, but has been a good shooter throughout his career so far. And the Spurs continue to stay young. So if you're the Rockets, you're competing now. There's no guarantee that the number 4 pick is going to be a better player than Keldon Johnson is already, especially if you're trying to be better quickly. So you get Keldon Johnson in here to be a more immediate contributor, as well as a player who's a proven scorer at the 3 spot. They need a small forward, good rebounder, pretty solid defender. I think Keldon's a good add. And third, the Hawks taking a pivot. So the Rockets receive DeJounte Murray and John Collins. The Hawks get Kevin Porter Jr., Jayshawn Tate, KJ Martin, and 3 first-round picks, including number 4. So the Hawks can add a backcourt mate in Kevin Porter Jr. for Trae Young, as well as getting a guy like Amen Thompson to be the backcourt mate. Amen Thompson is not an elite defender at this point. His brother Asar is a better defender, but there are different guys on the board if they wanted to look in a different direction. But the DeJounte Trae pairing, I would say, wasn't great. It's still young, so I wouldn't be like too kind of rush to move off of DeJounte. I think you could keep him, but DeJounte Murray alongside Jalen Green feels like a much more natural pairing because Jalen Green is a shooting guard. He doesn't have the ball in his hands quite as much, so DeJounte can be the lead guard here in Houston, pass the ball really well, play great defense like we saw in San Antonio with him, and maybe return to all-star form. You also add John Collins. So if Harden doesn't return, which, you know, maybe he won't, then you would have a starting 5 of DeJounte, Jalen Green, Jabari, John Collins, and Alperen Şengün as your group going forward, and I think that's really great. It doesn't doesn't necessarily rush the timeline, but does make the team better than they've been. And if you're the Hawks, you get good players here, multiple guys who you can fit in your rotation, and get a lot of picks back. They traded a lot of picks for DeJounte, so to recover some of that draft value, on top of getting KPJ, who I actually really like. Jayshawn Tate's a good defender, and KJ Martin isn't bad either. So in terms of value, they move off John Collins' contract, who they didn't want. It just seems pretty obvious that they don't want John Collins at this point, and they get back some of the value for DeJounte. So it's an interesting trade, but not one I would necessarily predict heavily. Now let's look at trades for the Pistons' 5th pick. Again, the Pistons making a playoff push here. So the Pistons receive OG Anunoby, and the Raptors get the 5th pick, Marvin Bagley, Killian Hayes, and a 2026 first. OG Anunoby would be a great wing player on top of what the Pistons already have. So you have Cade and Ivy as your backcourt. You can run Bojan at the 3 or OG at the 3, whichever, but that would be your forward tandem with Jalen Duren at the 5, and I think that would help them make a pretty clear jump towards the play-in, because I think Cade could be an all-star as soon as next season. People seem to forget quite how good Cade Cunningham really is. He's a phenomenal player and is only trending upward. Yes, he had that injury, but he's still a very good player and will be an all-star soon. For the Raptors here, you're getting the 5th pick, whoever that may be, whether it's a wing in Cam Whitmore, or you go like a guard in Anthony Black to be your potential Fred VanVleet replacement, but you get a kind of backup 4 probably for Siakam and Bagley. You get Killian Hayes, who a lot of people don't like to say it, but this dude is under the radar. Killian Hayes was good last year. He's not the best scorer, and he's kind of still inefficient as a shooter, but really good passer, good defender, is a big reason why the Pistons were in a lot of games, because of his lockdown defense, because of his playmaking for others, and he just does a lot of things. He's not a great scorer, a great shooter, but he seems to do just about everything else, and Killian is only getting better. I wouldn't be shocked if he went to another team and really excelled, especially in a place like Toronto. He's French, going to Toronto, or the Canadian country in general, I think could really help Killian Hayes, on top of getting another 1st-round pick. But the other option for Detroit, instead of trading out, would be to move up. So the Pistons here get the number 3 pick, and the Trailblazers get the number 5 pick, a 1st-round pick in 2026, and Isaiah Stewart to kind of beef up their front court. Maybe he can play some center minutes over Yusuf Nurkic, but the Trailblazers move back just 2 spots. They can add a wing, which they need more, especially if Scoot is still available at 3, but to me, I wouldn't do this if Scoot's available at 3, because you want Brandon Miller. You have Cade, you have Ivy. Miller is the guy at number 3, and maybe the Trailblazers don't love him. But at number 5, you get a wing, whether it's Cam Whitmore or whoever. There's a lot of good wings, whether it's Taylor Hendricks, Jarris Walker's not bad either. So you can add guys like that, while the Trailblazers can still add a very valuable player here at 5. And the Pistons get a guy in Brandon Miller, who I just think is a solid piece, is going to be a good scorer pretty quickly. And like I've said, not a shabby defender either. So the Pistons only move up 2 spots, but it helps them get a higher kind of level of player. And finally, let's look at some trades for the Magic. So the Magic move up for Scoot. It kind of feels like almost like the last piece here for the Magic is to get a really good point guard. They have Franz, they have Paolo Banchero, Wendell Carter Jr., kind of an underrated center as well, and one of Fultz or whoever, Suggs, can play the shooting guard. You get Scoot Henderson to be your point guard of the future, and to really lead this franchise forward. And for the Trailblazers, you get more draft assets, which you can trade later on. Number 6, number 11, and a defensive replacement for Hart again in Gary Harris, who has been kind of quiet in Orlando, but still is a valuable player for a playoff type of team. And finally, the last trade I'm going to talk about today is the Magic adding a star, going more all in. They trade for Zach LaVine. They'll give up the number 11 pick, Jalen Suggs, Jonathan Isaac, and Gary Harris. So they're taking on a really big contract in Zach LaVine, but a proven player who's been an all-star in 2 out of the last 3 seasons. He played like an all-star after the break as well. Just a very proven scorer, a very good scorer, and you would have your 2 through 4 spots locked up for the Magic. You have LaVine, you have Franz, you have Paolo, and now you can just kind of fill out around them, and this would help them. They would make the playoffs next year if they traded for LaVine. I think it's really that simple. And you're giving up some pieces that are kind of high upside, like Suggs. I think is another player who could really turn it around on another team, but has already been a good defender. Jonathan Isaac, one of the best defenders in the entire league when healthy, and we saw that this year in the limited action he was out there. And Gary Harris, again, just a nice wing piece. And they also get pick number 11, who in a relatively deeper draft, there will still be some nice picks there. But those are the 10 trades that I have today. Sorry for the nose stuff, but hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully you like the trades. Let me know what you think of the trades and what trades you personally would like to see on draft night, because there's a lot that could be done. There's a lot of different moves that could happen. Let me know your thoughts. Hopefully you think about subscribing again on the road to 8K. Think about liking the video and maybe sticking around. But that's going to be it for me today. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.